Hi guys, it's Michelle, and today's video is going to be a bit of a different one. I was researching a video that I posted last week, and I noticed that there was actually kind of a few stories about people who pretended to be missing children like years later. And I thought that this was a really interesting concept and would be an interesting video to talk about, like an entire video surrounding people who have impersonated missing children, because I think it's such a strange concept, but it happens way more often than you would think. And sometimes these people have spent months with these families posing as their missing child. So I just thought it was very interesting. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first story that we're going to be talking about is all about Walter Collins. On March 10th of 1928, Walter Collins' mother, Christine Collins, gave her 9-year-old son some money to go to the cinema in Los Angeles, California, and he never returned home. For the next 5 months, there were just a ton of loose ends and no real structured leads into what happened to Walter. In August of 1928, a boy claiming to be Walter turned himself in Illinois. A few pictures were exchanged of this boy and Christine Collins, who was Walter's mother, a couple letters back and forth, and ultimately she decided to fly him out to Los Angeles. However, Christine Collins took one look at the boy and said, "This is not my son." But the LAPD captain, J.J. Jones, reassured her that this kid was her son and that she should just take him home just to test him out and see if it's actually her son. I don't really understand that concept. I feel like if a mother is like, hey, like this isn't him, you would understand that, but the LAPD captain really was adamant that this was Walter Collins and was acting really weird about it too. He kept saying things like Walter had obviously changed because he was like growing up, but it really had only been 5 months since he went missing, so the thought of him like looking completely different is obviously doesn't really make sense. But Christine Collins did decide to take this boy home, and 3 weeks later she returned saying that this was not her son. Christine Collins was so adamant that this wasn't her son that the LAPD J.J. Jones actually had her committed to a mental institution, despite the fact that she had several accounts from different friends and family members that this was not Walter, and dental records proving that it wasn't Walter. A lot of this doesn't really add up. While Christine was at the mental institution, the boy finally confessed to not being Walter Collins, but to being a 12-year-old boy named Arthur Hutchins Jr. Arthur was a 12-year-old boy from Iowa who ran away from his father and stepmother, and once he realized his similarities to Walter Collins, he decided that he should try to take the free trip to California, and he really wanted to go to Hollywood to meet his favorite actor at the time, who was named Tom Mix. Unfortunately, the real Walter was never found. However, Christine was able to file a lawsuit against J.J. Jones. Obviously, they wrongfully put her in a mental institution when she was correct, sued him, and won for $10,800, which in the 1920s, obviously that is a lot of money. Even now, still a lot of money. Unfortunately, never got this money because J.J. Jones just like refused to pay it, which really sucks. And I just question what was his involvement. Like, why was he so adamant on not believing this woman that this wasn't her son? And even when it was proven, like, it was just really weird overall, I would say. So in 1929, a man named Gordon Stewart Northcott was actually found guilty of kidnapping and murdering 3 boys in the area. This later became known as the Wineville Chicken Coop murders. His mother, Sarah Louise Northcott, confessed in late 1928 to her involvement of murdering Walter Collins. Later, she attempted to rescind her confession, and Gordon himself always denied killing Walter Collins. Christine also didn't believe that Gordon killed her son. I think it was mostly because she wanted to believe that her son was actually still alive somewhere. Gordon actually agreed to tell Christine the details of her son's murder hours before he was supposed to be executed, but he retracted the agreement last minute and professed his innocence of any involvement in the Walter Collins case. I think is kind of interesting just because, I mean, I don't know, I feel like a lot of serial killers are crazy and they don't like giving the family satisfaction, but I'm like, what's the point if you're literally about to be executed? Like, I don't know. It's just like the mind of a serial killer is fucked up, so perhaps he did have involvement. I just think it's weird that the mom of Gordon would admit to having involvement of this. Like, out of the blue. Nonetheless, Christine Collins searched for Walter for the rest of her life, but sadly he was never found and the case remains unsolved. So the next case is probably one of the most famous cases of people who pretended to be missing children, and it's all about Nicholas Barclay. On June 13th of 1994, a boy named Nicholas Barclay was playing basketball with his friends in San Antonio, Texas when he never returned home. Although Nicholas was someone who had ran away from home before and he tended to act out as a kid, he seemed to disappear without a trace. He was a very troubled kid, and right before his disappearance, he actually anticipating a hearing to determine whether or not he was going to be sent to a juvenile delinquent home, which obviously at the time his parents just assumed that he ran away because it was so like convenient timing. He didn't come home after a full day. That was when everyone started to worry. At one point, the police received a call from Nicholas's uncle claiming that Nicholas was attempting to break into his garage, but he fled before the cops arrived. That was kind of the only evidence that Nicholas was alive or had ran away rather than been kidnapped. But for the most part, police and the family started to believe that Nicholas had been kidnapped and did not run away from home. 3 years later, Nicholas's mother received quite a jarring phone call from someone in Spain claiming that they had Nicholas Barclay. His sister flew out to Spain to go meet this person who was claiming to be Nicholas, and she determined that it was Nicholas. Sister Carrie was kind of showing Nicholas a bunch of different pictures from home and was like, this is your mom, like this is where we lived, the XYZ. It was just like she was prepping him for a test, which is confusing because if he really had disappeared from home, he would probably remember them. Basically, Nicholas's story was that he claimed that he was playing basketball with his friends and he was kidnapped on his way home, and he was driven to the airport, tossed on a plane to Europe, and his kidnappers pushed him into a child trafficking ring. He was eventually able to flee and was discovered by European law enforcement, which obviously resulted in him returning home. However, this boy was not the boy that they remembered. Despite the difference in appearance, which included having a new hair color, like he had clearly had bleached blonde hair, not natural blonde hair, and also a new eye color, which he claimed the kidnappers changed. His behavior was off. There was a lot of oddities within the whole situation, but his family was so happy to have him home that they just ignored it. Not to mention, Nicholas had 3 tattoos when he went missing, and he returned with these 3 tattoos still there. While the Barclay family was definitely welcoming of this new Nicholas, law enforcement had some concerns. Private investigator Charlie Parker was the one who really noticed a lot of inconsistencies with this man's story. So these inconsistencies, combined with the fact that he refused to hand over any samples of blood, fingerprints, really made Charlie Parker start to wonder if this was the real Nicholas Barclay. Charlie ended up really comparing photos of the Nicholas who disappeared and the Nicholas who returned home. And he noticed one key difference, which was that his ears were completely different. He also pointed out how it's nearly impossible to change the human eye color. It is like a very intensive, hard surgery that a kidnapper is very unlikely to go through just to hide the identity of this missing child. But the ear shapes and sizes were what really sold Charlie Parker on the concept that this was not Nicholas Barclay. So this Nicholas Barclay character was sent to Houston for a testing with a forensic doctor. The forensic doctor came to the conclusion that this was impossible to be Nicholas Barclay because of the way that he spoke. The Nicholas Barclay who returned home could not speak without a French accent, and a forensic doctor pretty much proved that this would be impossible to do over the course of time that he was missing for. So after this forensic doctor's findings, the FBI decided to contact Nicholas Barclay's family, his sister Carrie, and said that this man could be potentially very dangerous and that it was impossible for this to be Nicholas Barclay. The thing that I find weird is that Carrie completely ignored what the FBI said and took him in still as if he was her brother. So Nicholas's mother, Beverly, actually refused to give blood samples of her own, match this Nicholas person's blood sample. It was honestly very, very confusing and very suspicious, and this was actually when not only the FBI but the fake Nicholas decided to become a little concerned. The Nicholas who returned home began to think back when Carrie picked him up in Spain. He thought it was very strange that she was showing him all of these photos and pointing out different pictures of each family member, because this was the only reason that the police even believed him at all, is because he had this knowledge, even though he was just fed this knowledge you know, hours before with Carrie. Luckily, with Charles's evidence, the court ordered this Nicholas Barclay imposter to hand over blood and fingerprint samples. The Barclay family were horrified to discover that this was not their son and that the man who was living with them for the past 5 months was a 23-year-old French man named Frederic Pierre Bourdon, who was a serial imposter who took on over 500 different identities. He was basically known as the chameleon. He would always lie about who he was. Just a very sus dude. So after Frederick was found out, the FBI began to become very suspicious that the Barclays had something to do with their son's disappearance. They just couldn't understand how they could not recognize that this was their son. This person had a French accent, he had different eye color. It was just so strange. Once Bourdon was found out and arrested, he was sentenced to 6 years in jail. However, before he was sent to prison, he claimed that he was positive that the Barclay family were truly at fault and that they knew that he was not Nicholas the entire time. Frederick believed that they used his return as a way to cover up the fact that they actually had murdered Nicholas Barclay. He even claimed that Beverly had said to him that they know he's a fake because their oldest son Jason had killed Nicholas before dying of a drug overdose. Many people, including the private investigator Charlie Parker, believe that Frederick was onto something. They gave Nicholas's mom a polygraph test 2 times. She passed the first 2 times and they didn't really understand why she had passed, so they gave it to her again. The 3rd time she failed every single question. According to the FBI's accounts from the brother Jason, he claimed that he knew that it wasn't his brother but that he didn't care. And Jason later died of a drug overdose, so honestly it just leaves a lot of unanswered questions. I'm not sure if I think that the Barclay family like actually had anything to do with Nicholas's disappearance or if Sinister was occurring. However, I do think that it is very strange that they were so quick to take in a stranger who in my eyes was just clearly not Nicholas Barclay, and I feel like a parent would know that. But then again, I also do not know what it's like to lose a child and like have them be missing. I feel like it is a very traumatic experience that perhaps causes you to not think as clearly as you would want to. For me, the part of that I don't really get is the whole siblings and extended family. Like, I could understand how it would be super traumatic for like the actual parents of this child. Losing a kid is like probably one of the worst things that you could go through. But like the siblings and the aunts and uncles, I just feel like why would they randomly believe this imposter? It's not that they don't care or that they're not like connected, but obviously like a parent is more connected than like your sibling. Plus, it was only 3 years that he was missing. People don't really change that much in 3 years, from like 13 to 16 years old. Like they do, but they don't. Like you would just know. So I don't know. I do not know what I think of this case overall. I feel like it could go in a lot of different directions. Obviously, this Frederick guy was fucking crazy and he lied about literally everything. Why would I be taking his word? Like I'm not, but also the FBI thinks it's suspicious, but who really knows? Either way, that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think about these cases, especially the Nicholas Barclay one. I would love to hear your opinions below. And if you want another video like this, there are so many different stories of people who take the identity of missing children years later, which surprises me because I'm like, literally, why the fuck would you do that? People do. So I would love to hear if you guys want to hear more of those. But that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every single week, and I will see you guys later. Bye.